Hi everyone, my name is Brad Reynolds, and I'm going to be starting a worm farm right here in my garage. I live here in Springfield, Missouri, and I've been spending hundreds of hours online looking and reviewing other people's worm farms and how they're doing that, how they're making their bedding, what they're using to feed their worms, and I'm going to go through all that information one step at a time for you. And I'm expecting my worms to be delivered maybe today, maybe tomorrow. I've ordered my worms from a place called Uncle Jim's Earthworm Farm. I'm going to be raising European earthworms. The reason why I'm going to be using those is because they are a great composting worm. They like to tunnel, and I think that they'll do well here in Missouri. I've studied on the red wigglers and stuff, and from what my understanding is, they live in the top 2 or 3 inches of your compost pile or in your soil, and when it comes to a deep freeze, they don't weather too well. You'll lose most of your red wigglers. The earthworms, however, they tunnel deeper and they survive a lot better. So those are the ones I'm going to be trying to raise here in my garage right now until come spring. I'm going to be going through most of the things that I found most beneficial online on what to feed your worms, how to make the proper bedding for the worms, the moisture content for your worms, how to properly screen your worms, all the way down to getting your eggs, because you really don't want to throw away those eggs, or the cocoons, whatever they want to call those, because that will be the new life cycle for your worm farm. I'm going to also be going through the castings, what the castings are used for, how to sift those away from the earthworms without damaging your worms. So we're going to be building screens for those. We're going to be, like I said, go step by step on what I found was the best information on how to feed your worms and make the proper bedding. A few things that I have learned is on earthworms, they do not like light. So for that reason, I've picked up some totes. These are Rubbermaid totes that we just got at our Walmart store. They do have a little locking door on it. And one thing that I do know that you want to put some holes in the top of it so where they have plenty of ventilation so where they can breathe, so where the air can still get in there. Without air, your worms will die. Okay, and the reason I'm keeping the lid on is also just to try to make them stay inside their bin. I don't know that they really even try to get out, but we're going to do everything we can to make sure that they stay in their house and are nice and comfortable in there. A few things that I've learned on the web is you want to get the best kind of food nutrition for your worms, because the better the nutrition that you give your worms, the better the castings are going to be. If you're going to make worm tea, the better that the microbes are going to be in that also to be able to spread on your lawn, on your garden, your flowers, whatever you want to put that onto. And you won't have to be using all those other pesticides and stuff that you have to get from your local hardware stores. So I have just recently canceled my lawn care people because I do want to go strictly organic starting in the spring. I'm going to let the leaves that fall off the trees. Right now we're just going into fall here, so I'm going to let the leaves off the trees. I'm going to take a bunch of those. I've already started to collect some of those here in a bag. And I will be using some of these leaves for some of the worm composting, so where they can do that here naturally in the garage. I've also got some paper shreddings, which was given to me by a teacher that I know, works up in Lebanon, and they were just recently going through and getting rid of a bunch of records. So they just saved those, they shredded those all for me. And I've got bags of those. I'll show you those real quick here. I probably got more than enough shreddings. I've got 5 bags of this right now. So I'm sure that'll get me way past through winter, but we'll see whatever happens. And you'll learn this step by step with me too as we learn this together. With the best thing that I've heard, and I don't want any rocks, I don't want any dirt in my soil. I want strictly food products that the worms will eat, then later put out as castings. Castings is strictly worm poop. And that worm poop is something that is very high in nutritional value for your lawns. It's also a great pesticide. It carries a lot of microbes and stuff that are good for your plants. So if you're growing tomato plants and all kinds of stuff in your garden, this is the best kind of food that you can put in there without using any kind of fertilizers that you will later end up consuming, and you really don't want to do that. So you want to do it as organic as possible. So that's what I'm going to go step by step here in doing today. What I've got, when I got excited, I started reviewing all this stuff online. I was going through so many people's information that they put out there on how they're raising worms, making the worm bedding and all that information. So I want to make it A to Z videos of step by step on how I'm going to do this. And like I said, I'm going to go from the soils that I'm using, the organic soil, the food products that I'm going to be using, the screening that I'm going to be building for being able to sift away my worms in a nice healthy way, not to hurt them, to getting the best worm castings separated, and also being able to separate the eggs and keep the eggs and maintain those to where I continue to get worms. From what I understand, most eggs, you can get anywhere between 2 and 21 worms per egg. Most common is around 4 or 5 worms per every little egg, so you don't want to get rid of that because, like I said, that's your life cycle. What I have purchased is I went down to our Walmart store, or excuse me, I went down to Lowe's and picked up potting soil. Okay, this is just natural potting soil. It's got real good texture to it. It comes a little bit dry and stuff, so you will have to mix water to that. And I've already started that process, and what I'm going to show you is what I'm going to do from step by step all the way through at this point. Okay, right behind me here you'll see 3 tubs. The 3 tubs is holding 1 bag of compost, or not, I'm sorry, the peat moss. The peat moss itself, as I said, it has some twigs in it, it has some sticks in it, so you might want to get some of those out, you know, prior to getting your worms. And as I said, my worms hopefully will be arriving today, so we'll go from there. I pre-soaked my soil right now, and what I mean by soaked is I've moistened my soil. I've got all the twigs out of here. I'm going to bring over another little table here and see if I can get this to where you can see what I've done. Okay. These are not going to be the tubs I'm going to raise the worms in. This was mainly just to get my soil ready. So I went through here, I've taken out most any of the twigs. There are still a few little twigs in there, and I'm not too worried about that because when I go through the sifting, I'll get rid of the rest of that. I dampened my the soil, or the peat moss, with about, I'm going to say this was close to 2 gallons for this much of the peat moss. And you want to get it to where when you squeeze it, if you see, you'll see 1 or 2 drops dripping through there. Okay, that's about the consistency. That's about 70% humidity in there for the worms, and that's about a perfect living condition for these worms to live in. As I said, I picked up some other Rubbermaid tubs that I really would rather have here in the garage, just because they do have a lid that kind of seals down a little bit better. I'm going to drill some holes in those and put some of these the peat moss down in there to start the worm bed off. Okay? So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to get a 2x4 here that I set off to the side. I'm going to grab one of my Rubbermaid lids. I'm going to put several holes in the top of this. This is mainly just to let the worms breathe when they get here. As I said, I don't want them escaping, so they do have a locking lid mechanism on the tote. Once again, here on each side. So when the lid is put on, that'll seal the worms in there pretty good for me, and I won't have to worry about them trying to get away. Alright, so let's go ahead and drill a few holes here for you. And it doesn't really matter where you put them in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put probably 6 holes across the top of this here, and I'm just going to use a 2x4 to make sure that my drill bit doesn't go past the area where I want it to go. So, okay, so there's a hole about the size I'm going to be making it. It's about 1 inch in diameter. I'm just going to put 6 holes across here. Okay, as you see, easily done, not a problem. And that's just to let the ventilation in through the top of it. I'll clean up these holes a little bit here. I'll clean the holes up, get the extra plastic off here in a few minutes. Won't keep any time on that. But that's as simple as that is, just to get that taken care of. What I've done for to keep the worms in place, or where I want to store the worms, because, you know, of course there's the vehicle that's in here, and we do get snow and ice and all that going on out here during the winter time. So I wanted to make just a small little area back over here. I'm going to show you what I did with this. People are trying to, you know, there's all kinds of places to keep your worms. If it gets freezing cold, I will probably take them into the house. And the reason why I can do that is I'm not going to be giving them vegetable waste and stuff off the kitchen table, you know, salads and strawberries, all that kind of stuff that can bring in fruit flies. I don't want that in my house. I don't want the smell of manures. Manures takes a long time if you need to let it set and break down a little bit on its own, because if you put manures into your worm farm, cow manure, even though the worms love to eat it, of course, and red wigglers, horse manure, they all need some time to break down because they carry heat, and you don't want to cook your worms. Also, a lot of different bugs and stuff are in those manures, so that's why I've chosen not to use manure. Chicken manure or chicken droppings, they say is very good, but it's a very hot, a hot product to use, so you have to really watch that, because you do not want your worms to get overheated. So I just elected not to use that whatsoever. I'm just going to use peat moss, paper shreddings, cardboard. I'm going to be using leaves that I've picked up off from all the foliage that are dropping. And if you don't have trees and stuff that are dropping leaves, or you don't have trees in your yard, go down to your local park, and I'm sure nobody will mind if you rake up some leaves and keep those there in your own pile or in a bag in your garage, and then you can just feed those as you want them in your worm farm. I am going to be feeding everything to my worms on the top. And as this goes on, I'm going to be showing videos of how to properly feed, what I'm feeding, and how to keep the moisture content where you want that, okay?